October 12th, 1984. Northern edge of the Ozark Plateau, Missouri side, 0345 hours. The creek mist hung low, crawling through the sycamores like smoke from an old burn. My team was 5 men, third night on a field nav course meant to simulate a deep recon lane. We moved light, no live rounds, only blanks and training comms. At grid 16, TFL 8924, we halted. The point man whispered one word over his shoulder. Tracks. I stepped up and saw them under my red lens. Barefoot impressions deep into the wet sand. Wide. Longer than any boot size we carried. The stride was near 40 inches. Each toe print sharp, nails visible. I pressed my hand beside one, and my fingers did not reach across the ball. We followed the line 10 meters until it left the creek bed and climbed toward the bluff. The night air cooled fast. A coyote yipped once, then silence. I looked up. A shape moved against the ridge skyline. Tall, narrow, and slow. Then it was gone. We marked the grid and called it in as unidentified track sign. That was where the incident began. The exercise had begun 3 days before we found the tracks. Officially, it was a land navigation and reconnaissance evaluation for small unit leaders under 1st Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment. Unofficially, it was a stress test for new field protocols before winter training in Washington State. We were running light and independent with minimal outside support. 5 men, 5 radios, a 3-day cycle, and a 20-kilometer operational box inside the northern Ozarks. The terrain there was thick with oak, hickory, and limestone breaks. The region looked harmless on a map but punished movement. Every hollow held water, and every rise carried deadfall that could twist an ankle. Visibility rarely stretched past 50 meters. Daylight navigation was slow. Night movement was slower. The weather stayed damp, alternating between light rain and dense fog that clung to the valleys. It was good training ground for patience and silence. Our orders came through Camp Robinson in Arkansas, then transferred by coded message to the Forward Ranger Detachment at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. The directive was simple. Maintain stealth patrols, log terrain data, practice extended communications, and report any unauthorized human activity. Local authorities had requested cooperation after several trespassing incidents near a federal wildlife corridor. Rangers were ideal for the task, disciplined, invisible, and unlikely to escalate contact. Our team leader was Staff Sergeant Keller. He had 10 years in and knew every step of the Ranger Handbook. I was second in command, responsible for signals and map work. The rest were specialists, 1 medic, 1 marksman, 1 engineer. All experienced, all quiet. Each man carried an M16A1 with blanks and a blank adapter muzzle. Full gear minus live ammunition. Our comms were a single PRC-77 and a backup AN/PRT-4 transmitter. Each of us wore ALICE webbing and a ruck averaging 60 pounds. Rations were MRE prototypes, the brown pouch kind that still smelled of cardboard. Everything else was standard for the time. Woodland BDUS, black boots, green berets stowed in the packs. We deployed from a supply truck at 2100 hours on October 9, 1984, 25 miles south of Rolla. The truck turned back after offloading us. From then on, we were alone. The map grid defined our boundaries and our mission clock began. Our route followed a series of dry creek beds that led toward a section called Devil's Backbone. The name came from the narrow ridge that divided 2 deep valleys. Locals avoided it. They said it carried bad luck, though we ignored that talk. Rangers trained to erase superstition. Still, even Keller mentioned that the ridge showed strange echo returns on earlier navigation runs. I logged it and moved on. The first night passed clean. We set up a low camp under ponchos, established perimeter sectors, and kept a single red lens lamp active for map checks. The second day brought fog so thick that compasses became our only truth. By afternoon, we had crossed into a new valley system with high limestone walls and a steady trickle of water along the floor. It looked like a good recon lane, isolated, hidden, natural cover everywhere. We moved through there on foot, cataloging erosion patterns and vegetation. Around mid-afternoon, Keller decided to extend our stay to complete the secondary radio tests. We established a temporary listening post overlooking the creek. That decision placed us within 1 kilometer of where we would later find the first track. On the evening of October 11th, we heard movement downstream. Not animal noise, but a slow rhythm of steps on gravel. It stopped as soon as we listened. Keller signaled to hold. We heard breathing, low and heavy, then silence. No visual contact. He chalked it up to deer or wild hogs. We logged it as audio anomaly. I remember the entry, 2216 hours, faint steps, unknown source, no confirmation. That note would later become critical. The Ozarks at night have a distinct silence, almost too complete. No distant engines, no highway hum, only wind in the trees and the occasional bark of a fox. It teaches you how much noise a human body makes, even when trying to move quietly. That was why the sound we heard bothered me. It was slow, heavy, deliberate. The rhythm didn't match wildlife. It sounded like someone testing the ground before each step. By midnight, the rain started again, steady but light. We stayed under our ponchos until 0300, then resumed the patrol north, following the creek line. I carried the compass, Keller carried the map. The medics stayed rear guard. It was there, during that pre-dawn leg, that we found the prints I mentioned earlier. They looked fresh, less than an hour old, the edges still sharp, not softened by the rain. Each print faced north, following the same direction we were moving. That discovery changed the mission tone. Training turned to real-world observation. We stood over those prints for a long minute before anyone spoke. Keller crouched and measured one with his hand. The print swallowed his palm. It had 5 clean toes, a full arch, and no sign of boots or shoes. The depth told its own story. Whatever made it weighed more than any man we knew. The ground was soft, but not that soft. The engineer took a photo with the training camera, then marked the spot with a small twig cross. Keller ordered us to follow the trail quietly and note everything. The prints led us out of the creek bed and into the timberline. The spacing between steps stayed long and even, like a man jogging uphill without breaking stride. The rain had washed older sign away, but these stayed sharp. We followed for nearly 60 meters before the trail broke apart on rock. From there, we found drag marks through wet leaves and one broken sapling about 8 feet high. It looked snapped by hand, not by wind. Keller called a short halt. He reminded us that our mission was still an evaluation, not a hunt. We were to observe, not engage. I logged the coordinates and switched on the PRC-77 to report unidentified barefoot track, human shape, possible transient. The reply from control was brief: copy, maintain movement, avoid contact. That was the kind of answer we expected. Keep going, stay silent, do the job. By daylight, the weather cleared. Fog lifted off the valley and revealed the terrain around us. The Ozark forest can look endless from the inside, rows of ridges fading blue into the next. You start to feel small out there. We moved along a contour path and found old fence posts sunk deep in moss. The wire was gone, probably a forgotten boundary line from before the area became federal land. That told us the place had seen human life before, but not recently. Later that morning, we found something else. A cut branch leaned against a tree trunk in a pattern too clean to be natural. 4 sticks arranged in a triangle, tied at the top with a strip of old canvas. It looked like a marker. The cloth was weathered but not rotted. The engineer said it might be a survey marker, though it didn't match standard signs. We photographed it and moved on. That afternoon, we made our temporary patrol base along a ridgeline overlooking the creek. We dug in shallow, used ponchos for cover, and built no fire. The air stayed cold enough that our breath steamed. I checked the radio again, running a test call to a secondary team operating 10 miles west. Signal strength was weak. The hills blocked transmission. We switched to relay bursts through the PRT-4 to maintain the log schedule. After we settled, Keller and I reviewed the map. The coordinates from the footprint site lined up with a civilian report filed 2 months earlier. A local trapper had claimed to see a huge man moving through his line near the same creek. The report never made it to state level because no damage or crime occurred. The file stayed local, but someone at Camp Robinson must have remembered it. That explained why our mission box covered this ground. We decided to stay on the ridge for the night. The medic took first watch. I slept lightly, head against my ruck, rifle across my lap. Around 2,300, I woke to a sound like a branch snap below the slope. The medic whispered that he had seen movement near the tree line. We scanned through NVGs but saw nothing. The air was still. Even the insects had stopped. I kept my eyes open until dawn. At sunrise, we descended again to check the creek bed. The prints we saw the night before were still there, now partially filled with silt. The edges softened, which told us time had passed but not long. We found one new impression downstream. It was deeper, sharper, like whoever made it had slipped slightly and corrected. I measured the length with the engineer's ruler. 14 inches, heel to toe. That was too long for any standard boot size on record for the Army or law enforcement in that region. By then, Keller decided the incident needed escalation. He drafted a short contact report using code phrases to avoid false alarms. Unregistered individual, unarmed, large stature, moving north. We transmitted at 0840 hours. The reply came 15 minutes later from Fort Leonard Wood's liaison. They requested coordinates and asked for confirmation if we saw signs of injury or distress. That suggested they believed it was a missing person case. We packed up and moved north along the same bearing. Each man scanned his lane, rifles low but ready. The forest grew thicker, and the air smelled of wet leaves and iron. I remember that smell clearly. It felt like something watching us. I can't say why, just instinct. We kept walking until we reached the ridge where I first saw the tall shape. The tracks ended there, replaced by flattened grass and disturbed soil. From the top, we could see the next valley opening wide, sunlight flashing on the creek below. That view was quiet, but none of us felt easy. It was at that point that command rerouted us toward the next grid for continued observation. We packed fast and moved down the slope, unaware that we were walking straight toward the second encounter. We took the slope in a slow file, rifles low, eyes on the ground. The soil held fresh scuffs where the grass thinned. The line angled north, then cut across a shelf of limestone. On the stone, the sign went light, but not gone. Fine mud from the creek smeared in ovals where a bare foot had slipped, then pushed off. Each mark pointed the same way. No wandering, no hesitation. We kept spacing, 10 meters between men. I logged times in the notebook and checked the PRC-77. The battery read good. I sent a burst to control with our grid in a short note. Unknown individual still moving. No sign of footwear. No contact. We reached a bend in the valley where the creek made a wide pool. On the bank, we found a cache under a ledge, a strip of canvas, 2 lengths of fishing line, a crude smoker made from green sticks. The wood still felt warm. No fire, just heat left in the sticks. The medic touched the soot and shook his head. Fresh. We took photos and put everything back where we found it. Across the pool, the trail climbed through laurel and into shadow. The brush showed a chest-high sweep where something large had passed. The saplings bent to the same side. I paced the stride again. It held at near 40 inches. The engineer measured the height of the broken branch we had seen earlier, over 7 feet. We pushed another 100 meters and halted at a narrow draw. Rocks stood like teeth in the ground. On one flat top lay a small pebble stack. 3 stones, clean edges, a marker or nothing. We logged it and pressed on. The ridge ahead narrowed into a saddle that would carry us to the next sighting. We reached the saddle just before dusk. The sun dropped behind the trees and the light turned orange between the trunks. Keller signaled to halt. The air was still. No birds, no wind. Just the slow sound of our own gear settling. He wanted us to stay until full dark and watch the hollow below. We dug in shallow and stayed quiet. The medic passed an energy bar down the line. I remember the taste of dirt on my gloves when I took it. My nerves were running high, but training kept me steady. Every few minutes I scanned the valley through my NVGs. The green glow showed movement in layers, branches shifting, insects, heat spots on the rocks. Nothing human. Then something moved near the far ridge. A shape, taller than the brush, crossing the slope fast and light. I called Keller's attention with a tap. He saw it too. It paused, turned its head slightly toward us, then moved again. The distance was hard to judge, but the silhouette looked broad, maybe 7 feet. It walked upright with long, even steps. No weapon, no pack, just a human outline against the dim sky. We kept eyes on it for 10 seconds before it vanished into cover. After the silhouette vanished, a fist-sized rock rolled down from above our side of the ridge. It was not a hard throw, but its timing suggested intent. It hit the dirt 6 meters ahead and stopped. Keller whispered for us to hold position. No lights, no calls. We stayed still until the forest sounds returned. When darkness closed in fully, we withdrew down the opposite slope. We thought that was the end of it, but the night had other plans. The next contact came closer, and this time, it wasn't just footprints. That night, the radio came alive just after 0200. The signal was faint but clear enough to make out. Command relayed a message from the county sheriff's office. A hiker had gone missing 3 days earlier, somewhere inside our training area. They asked us to help with the search at first light. The timing matched too well with what we were seeing. Keller agreed without hesitation. The mission shifted from evaluation to real-world operation. We packed and moved before dawn. The temperature dropped into the low 40s, and the fog returned, thicker than before. It rolled through the trees like smoke, muffling every sound. Visibility dropped to 15 meters. Keller had us tighten formation. He took point, I followed, then the medic, the marksman, and the engineer in the rear. Our route followed the same direction the tracks had taken, northwest, deeper into the ridge country. We found the first trace of the missing hiker around 6-10 hours. A torn nylon strap, bright red, caught on a branch about chest height. It was part of a backpack harness. The break looked clean, as if cut or pulled apart by strong force. Below it, in the mud, we found boot prints heading downhill. They overlapped with the barefoot impressions we'd been tracking. That was the first time we saw both sets together. It meant the missing man had crossed paths with whatever else was out here. Keller ordered a 360 perimeter and radioed the find. Control told us to continue until we located more evidence. The engineer tied a strip of green tape to mark the spot. We kept moving. The tracks led down to a small clearing with a pool of water at its center. There we found more signs. A torn sleeve from a blue flannel shirt, and next to it, blood. Not much, just a few drops mixed in with mud. The medic tested it with a field kit. Human. The air felt heavier after that. We were all quiet. You could feel the shift in everyone's focus. We were not training anymore. At 0700, we heard movement from upslope. Keller signaled for cover. Through the trees came a faint sound, slow breathing again, then a deep, dragging scrape like something heavy being pulled across stone. We froze. The sound stopped, then started again. Closer this time. I raised the night vision goggles, but the fog made them useless. Keller pointed to my watch. We waited for 1 full minute in silence. Then just as suddenly, the sound faded away. Gone. We broke from cover and climbed toward it, slow and cautious. The ground showed clear sign of disturbance. Leaves crushed, rocks shifted, a drag line wide enough for a man's body. The medic said it looked like someone being carried or pulled. We followed it 50 meters uphill to where it ended at a limestone overhang. The rock face above us was marked by handprints, muddy, wide, and high. Too high for a normal reach. Each print was spaced roughly 2 feet apart, like someone large had climbed the rock wall. The engineer measured one handprint with his ruler, 9 inches across the palm. Not possible for any of us. We photographed it. Keller wrote the time and coordinates. Then he made the call. Control, confirm switch to real recovery. We have probable human contact plus anomalous evidence. Request further instructions. Control acknowledged and told us to proceed with caution until backup arrived by noon. We set a perimeter at the base of the ridge and waited. No movement, no sound, only the steady drip of water from the rocks. At 0830, we heard a distant echo, a single shout carried by the wind. It came from somewhere above us. We couldn't tell if it was human. Keller ordered 2 men to stay on security while the rest of us climbed toward the ridgeline. The climb took 10 minutes. The slope was steep, and the soil kept breaking under our boots. When we reached the top, the ridge leveled out into a narrow plateau. At the center stood a dead tree split open by lightning. Near it, something had been dragged across the ground, cutting a shallow trench through moss and dirt. We found another print there, barefoot, larger than the ones before, pressed deep into the soil. Next to it lay a single human boot, unlaced, size 11. It matched the missing hiker's report. We spread out and searched the perimeter. No body, no fresh trail. The fog lifted for a moment, and through the clearing below, I caught sight of movement again. The same unknown male from before, crossing between two trees. It paused, looked up in our direction, then turned away and disappeared into the brush. Too far for detail, but close enough to see its outline against the clearing. Shoulders wide, arms long, gait heavy and deliberate. Keller didn't chase. He raised his hand for a hold and told us to stay silent. He looked at the ground, then at me. His face was calm but focused. We both knew the tracks we'd been following weren't random anymore. Whoever or whatever was out here wasn't running from us. It was circling us. The radio cracked again. Control confirmed that a joint search team with local authorities would enter our grid by 1100 hours. We were to maintain position, mark the area, and avoid confrontation. Keller nodded and set our team in a defensive semicircle along the ridge. We waited. The forest stayed quiet, but something about that silence felt wrong. Every sound we made seemed too loud, too clear. Even the wind carried a rhythm that made you listen twice. We checked our watches. The backup was still 30 minutes away. Then from somewhere behind the ridge, we heard a noise like stone striking metal, a sharp, hollow clang that echoed across the valley. Once, then twice, then silence. Keller motioned to move. He wanted to locate the source before backup arrived. The sound came from just beyond the slope, where a dry creek cut into a narrow gorge. We advanced in a line, weapons raised, boots careful on the rock. The smell changed. Damp earth mixed with something metallic, faint but sharp. When we reached the edge, we saw a fresh scrape on the rock face, metal against stone. Below it, another partial footprint, this one with a streak of blood near the heel. That was where we realized we weren't tracking a myth or a shadow. There was a wounded person out here, large or not, and we were the only ones close enough to find him before the others arrived. We formed a tight wedge and followed the blood streak down into the gorge. The rock was slick, the angle steep, but we took it slow. Keller went first, I covered him. The others followed one at a time. The sound of water echoed somewhere below, mixed with the faint rattle of loose stones. The air was colder there. You could feel it against your face. 0938 hours. The trail curved left and opened into a shallow basin. The ground leveled out, covered in ferns and old branches. In the middle, half hidden under brush, lay a man. At first glance, I thought it was the missing hiker, but the body was too large. He was on his side, facing away. His clothes were torn, mixed layers of civilian gear denim, flannel, canvas, bare feet, the soles thick with callus and mud. His arms were long, too long, skin pale and scratched. He was breathing, shallow and slow. Keller signaled halt and crouched beside him. The medic moved forward, checked the pulse, then froze. The man opened his eyes, gray-blue, unfocused. He looked past us like he didn't see anything. Keller spoke calm, steady words, asking for his name. The man tried to push up but slipped, his strength gone. The medic eased him down again. He was shaking, not from cold but exhaustion. No weapon, no gear, just a body built heavy from years of labor or wandering. I remember the smell, dirt, sweat, and smoke, the kind that clings to someone who has lived outside too long. His hands were scarred, knuckles split. One wrist had a rough wrap made from canvas and wire, soaked with old blood. The medic cut it loose. The wound underneath looked infected. Keller told me to call it in. I keyed the radio. Control, we have contact. One adult male, alive, height about 7 feet or more. Barefoot prints measure 14 inches heel to toe. Palm width about 9 inches. Stride near 40 inches. Severe fatigue with minor injuries. Need medevac. The line crackled. Control acknowledged, told us to stabilize and wait. ETA 45 minutes for the search team. The man tried to speak but only managed a low, broken sound. His voice was deep, almost like a cough. The medic gave him water from a canteen. He drank slowly, eyes still wide, still distant. Keller kept his rifle slung, but ready. Something about the man's movements felt unpredictable. Not aggressive, but wrong in rhythm, like he wasn't used to being around people anymore. We started clearing the brush around him to make room for the evac litter. That's when I saw another trail leading away from the basin. Small footprints, boots, the missing hiker. The prints showed a limp left foot dragging, blood drops between steps. They went uphill along the same path we had come down. Somehow the hiker had been with this man, maybe even rescued by him. Keller decided to send the engineer and marksman to follow the hiker's trail while the medic and I stayed to secure the injured man. We set a perimeter. The forest was quiet again, but I kept catching movement in the edges of my vision. The man's eyes followed the noise too. His head turned sharply at sounds we couldn't place. Every time a branch snapped, his breathing quickened. At 9:40, the radio picked up static, then a burst of a distant call sign from the incoming team. Before I could respond, the man sat upright, fast, strong. Keller and the medic held him back, but he didn't fight. He looked past us toward the ridge and pointed with a shaking hand. A single word came out, hoarse and rough. "Down!" Then he collapsed again. A second later, we heard shouting from uphill. The two men we'd sent out were calling for help. Keller sprinted toward them, and I followed. We climbed the slope, branches tearing at our sleeves. The sound grew clearer, one voice yelling, the other short bursts of command. 09:42 hours. When we reached them, the missing hiker was there, half conscious, leaning against a tree. His leg was cut open, deep, wrapped in his own torn shirt. He kept mumbling something about being chased, about a big man trying to save him from a fall. The story came out in pieces, broken, mixed with fear and cold. We moved fast to carry him back down the slope to the basin. When we arrived, the tall man was gone. Only his footprints remained, leading away through the ferns toward the darker end of the gorge. Keller cursed under his breath, then gave the order. "Secure the casualty. Stay alert." The medic worked on the hiker's leg while Keller and I followed the fresh prints a short distance. They went straight into a wall of stone and stopped on first inspection with no visible gap. No crack, no cave, just an end. Later, on a second sweep, we peeled back moss and found a narrow recess hidden under the slope that was not visible at first contact. It was like the man had walked into the rock and vanished. Keller looked at me and said quietly, "He's moving faster than we can track." Then he keyed the radio again, calling for immediate extraction for both casualties. We set up a landing zone marker in the clearing just beyond the ridge. The wind had picked up by then. You could hear the chop of rotors in the distance. The backup team was finally inbound. But before they reached us, the forest gave one last sign that this was not finished. From deep inside the gorge came a low, drawn-out sound. Not a shout, not an animal, just one deep breath, carried through the trees. The sound stopped us cold. It wasn't loud, but it carried weight, like air drawn through a hollow chest. Keller froze, eyes scanning the ridgeline. The medic had the hiker on a blanket, wrapping his leg tight. The engineer looked down into the gorge, rifle angled low. I watched the tree line. Nothing moved. Then a shadow passed between the trunks, just a flash of darker shape in the fog. The unknown male was still near. Keller motioned for quiet. We went to ground, using fallen logs for cover. The radio hissed once, then cut out. The helicopter was close now, so we used the orange panel only. Comms were unstable, and we would not risk active radio signaling until we knew what was below us. Minutes dragged. I heard footsteps again, slow, steady, heavy on the rock. One, then another, coming closer. The medic whispered that the hiker was awake but disoriented. He kept repeating the same phrase. He was helping me. We didn't know what that meant. Through the mist, movement took shape. The tall figure stepped out from the trees at the edge of the basin. He stood still, breathing hard. His clothes were torn, his face covered in dirt and dried blood. The light caught him for a moment, and I saw his eyes. Calm, tired. He looked more lost than dangerous. Keller stood slowly, rifle lowered. He called out once, clear voice, steady tone, no threat, just an order to stop. The man didn't move. Then he pointed again toward the creek and took a slow step back. His foot slipped, and he caught himself with one hand on a branch. The strength in that single motion told you how big he was. Keller told us to hold fire, even though we had no live rounds anyway. The man took another step backward, then turned and disappeared into the fog. We moved forward but found only fresh footprints heading west. Keller ordered us to stop the pursuit because the mission priority was extraction of a live civilian with no live ammunition carried by our team and an inbound evac arriving within minutes. The medic nodded, finished securing the hiker, and waved for help. At 0945, the helicopter circled in, lowering through the mist. We threw the orange panel on the open patch of ground and cleared the zone. The wind from the rotors sent leaves flying and rattled the branches above us. 2 men from the search team jumped out with gear. Keller briefed them quick, using short sentences, sticking to facts. 1 injured hiker recovered, 1 unknown male sighted, direction of movement west-northwest, non-aggressive, possibly disoriented. The hiker went up first. His eyes stayed wide the whole time, fixed on the ridge behind us. He said one thing before they loaded him. He pulled me out of the water. Then the noise from the rotors drowned him out. Once the evac lifted, Keller ordered us to sweep the basin one more time before extraction. We moved in a line again, clearing every corner. No movement. Only those same wide footprints leading into the rocks. The ground was firm now, the edges crisp. The stride told us he was walking, not running. The engineer stopped at the rock wall where the prints ended. He called us over. A section of moss had peeled back, revealing a narrow gap hidden under the slope. Keller crouched and shined his light inside. The beam cut through dust and caught something metallic, an old tin cup and a small pile of cloth. On a deliberate second check of the rock face, we found it was not a cave, just a short recess about 6 feet deep that had been concealed by moss on our first pass. Inside were scraps of gear, a broken knife, part of a rucksack frame, a torn army blanket stamped with US and a year too faded to read. It looked like someone had been living there, hiding, maybe for years. We took photos and logged everything. Keller wrote the last line himself. Unknown adult male, extreme stature, appears transient, assisted missing person, retreated on contact. Evidence of prolonged habitation. That was the official note, clean and careful. At 10:15, the extraction team signaled ready. We packed up, checked the perimeter, and climbed to the ridge for pickup. The fog had started to break. Sunlight pushed through, lighting the valley in streaks of white and gold. From above, the forest looked endless, all ridges and shadows. Before we left, Keller stopped and looked back toward the gorge. He raised his binoculars and scanned one last time. I saw what he saw on a far slope, a single figure moving through the trees, slow and upright. Then gone again, swallowed by the hills. The helicopter lifted us out. The basin disappeared under cloud and distance. We said nothing on the ride back. There was nothing left to say. The incident would be written up, sealed and filed. But every man on that flight knew what we had seen was real. The report later classified it as assistance rendered to unknown local male, unarmed, non-hostile. The details stopped there. No name, no photos, just coordinates and the word closed. But in that valley under those same trees, someone still walked alone. Big, quiet, and unseen. We landed at the forward site near Fort Leonard Wood just after noon. The hiker went straight to the base hospital. Our team went into the debrief room. We still had mud on our uniforms and the smell of the valley on us. Keller spoke first, giving a clear rundown. Timeline, coordinates, distances, everything by the book. No speculation, no emotion. The officer from operations sat across from him, writing fast. When it came my turn, I repeated my log. I described the tracks, the cache, the injured man, the prints that stopped in the stone. The officer didn't interrupt. He only asked twice about size and shape. Barefoot, about 14 inches long, same as before? I said yes. He nodded and kept writing. The medic turned in the medical notes. The hiker's wound was deep but clean. No infection yet. His condition was stable. The hiker had repeated the same thing to the medics. A large man had pulled him out of a creek after he slipped from a ridge. He had been too weak to walk and had lost his pack. He said the man had carried him for a while, then set him down when he heard us moving nearby. That matched what we saw. By 1600 hours, the written reports were done. The officer collected our cameras and film rolls. He told us not to discuss the details outside the team. That was standard procedure, but his tone made it sound heavier. The prints, he said, would be reviewed by specialists from Fort Hood and the State Conservation Office. We didn't see those photos again. The next morning, we were called back for a short follow-up. Command had already spoken with local law enforcement. They confirmed the hiker's identity. He was an experienced woodsman from Springfield, missing for 72 hours. He told them again about the tall man who found him. The sheriff's deputy asked if we believed it. Keller said yes, we all saw the same prints. The deputy didn't press further. Later that week, 2 officers from a different branch came in, wearing plain uniforms. They reviewed our written accounts and asked short, specific questions. Did the man show signs of aggression? Did he speak clearly? Did he appear malnourished? We answered everything straight. They thanked us and said the data would be filed with non-standard civilian encounters. That phrase stuck in my head. We returned to training 2 days later. Same forest, different valley. The air felt no different, but every branch crack drew our attention. The medic started carrying plaster in his kit for tracks, just in case. We never found any again. 2 weeks after the mission, Keller received an internal memo marked restricted. It contained the final classification of the event. Unidentified transient male, abnormally tall, non-threatening, likely hermit, assisted civilian rescue. No further contact, that was the end of it on paper. But off the record, the engineers from Post went back to the gorge with the conservation team. They took plaster casts from the prints and collected soil samples. I saw one of the casts before it was sent out. It looked too big for any known boot. The toes were clear, deep, and natural. Someone real had made them. I heard later that the cast was stored in a controlled facility for analysis. I never heard the result. The hiker recovered fast. He gave a short statement to the local newspaper. The story said he was found by Army trainees and that he survived a fall. No mention of the man who helped him. That part never reached print. Keller transferred out the next year. The medic stayed one more rotation, then moved to a training post in Georgia. I stayed until '86, still running field lanes through the same ridges. I never saw anything like that again, but every time we passed the Devil's Backbone Ridge, I looked down at the valley where it happened. It looked quiet from above, just trees, mist, and water. You'd never guess what we found there. That thought carried with me through every new assignment, every map I unfolded. 3 weeks later, we were called again for one last review. This time it was inside a small conference room. No insignia, no flags. 2 men from intelligence sat with tape recorders and folders, marked field correlation. They asked about details we thought were minor. Temperature, wind direction, sound range, even soil moisture. It felt more like an analysis than a debrief. They wanted exact times and spacing between footprints, how deep they were, how many photos we took. Keller stayed calm through all of it. He had kept every detail in order. When they finished, one of the men said the case was being closed as non-hostile human encounter. He said the large male might have been a former service member living off-grid, possibly with health issues. That sounded like a guess, but Keller didn't argue. They thanked us, turned off the recorders, and left without another word. That was the last official contact we had about it. A week later, the engineer received a transfer order to a survey unit in Alaska. The medic left for ranger school. The rest of us rotated through short assignments until the training cycle ended. The Ozark lanes were shut down for a month after a heavy storm. When they reopened, the maps had been updated. The valley where we found the tracks was now marked restricted watershed. No one trained there again. Months later, I ran into one of the conservation officers who had helped collect the plaster casts. He told me they sent the samples to a university lab in Kansas for testing. When I asked what they found, he said only, "Nothing conclusive," then changed the subject. I didn't push. Some things were better left alone. In late December, we received the final summary through the chain of command. It was 1 page long. Most of it was redacted. The only visible lines read, "Subject remains unidentified. Physical evidence consistent with large adult male. No further sightings. Area closed to public access." The last sentence said, "Case file archived, classification, unconfirmed humanitarian aid." That was the official ending. Keller kept a copy of the grid map from that mission. He folded it into his field manual and carried it until the day he retired. I saw it once, years later, when we met at a reunion. The ink had faded, But the mark at grid 16 TFL 8924 was still there, drawn in pencil, right where we had found the first print. I asked him if he ever went back. He shook his head, said he didn't need to. He'd seen enough. The hiker's story faded fast. The local papers lost interest after a week. No one ever matched the description of the tall man to any missing person. There were no reports of violence, no sightings, no new evidence. The forest swallowed the story like it had swallowed the man. But every now and then, during later exercises, a new team would report strange sounds or finding large barefoot impressions near the same sector. They always came back listed as animal tracks, nothing more. The same explanation every time. Years later, when I left the service, I went through the public records archive just out of curiosity. The file from that October was gone. The number still existed in the index, but the document itself was sealed under an internal code. I stopped there. Whatever that file contained, it was staying buried. That valley is still quiet today. Locals say hikers sometimes hear heavy steps in the fog, but no one ever finds footprints. The creek still runs clear. The ridge still casts its shadow over the basin. Nothing looks out of place. But if you stand on that ridge before sunrise when the fog lifts and the light touches the rocks, you can almost see the shape of a man moving below. Tall, steady, walking the same route we tracked that night in 1984. And that's where the record ends. No names, no photos, just coordinates and silence. The last confirmed sighting came at 0948 hours on October 12, 1984. Our team stood on the ridgeline waiting for extraction when Keller spotted movement on the far slope. Through binoculars, the figure appeared briefly between two oaks, walking upright, heading west. No sound followed. The light struck the ridge, and then the fog closed over him. That was the final visual record. After the mission, all reports were reviewed and classified. The field log listed 2 subjects, 1 civilian male, recovered alive, and 1 unidentified adult male, unarmed, abnormally tall, last seen moving west along grid 16 TFL 8924. Medical evaluation confirmed the rescued hiker sustained a deep leg laceration, but survived without complication. No further search operations were approved. The physical evidence, casts, photographs, and field notes, was transferred to a regional archive under reference code R84117. The plaster cast measured 14 inches heel to toe and remained intact during transport. Soil samples were tested for contamination and returned negative. The valley was reclassified as a restricted watershed and closed to training traffic. Personnel involved in the operation were reassigned to standard duties within 60 days. The report summary was filed as unconfirmed humanitarian contact non-hostile. The case received no public release. In 1986, a notation was added to the record. No subsequent activity detected, no additional evidence recovered. The cast and photographs were logged into long-term storage at Fort Hood, Record Annex 7B. The coordinates 16 TFL 8924 remain unchanged on current maps, but fall within a no-access zone. That is where the record stops. All evidence accounted for, all witnesses reassigned, no further sightings. End of incident file, Operation Ozark Recon, 12th of October, 1984. Don't turn off your lights yet. If you like the video, hit like and watch the next amazing horror story showing on your screen.